All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at properties of quadrilateral. I'm going to briefly go over one. I know we've looked at it already. For number one, on the properties of quadrilaterals worksheet, we looked at HI and DE were the same length at 5.83 or 5.8. ID and EH are the same length at 10.77, or you can do it at 10.8 would be fine as well. The slopes for C, this is number one. The slopes for C, we've got that HI and DE have the same slope as -3/5, and ID and EH have the same slope as 5/-2. We did this yesterday. I'm just going over it quickly so we have it. Okay, the length of HD was 13.34, and the length of IE was 7.07. They were not the same. The slopes were completely different. -13/9 for HD and 7/1 for IE. Okay, the midpoints were the same for them. HD was 6.5 and 7.5, and IE was 6.5 and 7.5. Okay? Because of this information, opposite sides were congruent and parallel. Diagonals were not congruent and were not perpendicular. There was no perpendicular slopes. The midpoints were the same, so we know it bisected. We can say that it is a parallelogram because it has all of those things. Okay, we're going to go to number 2, which we have not gone over yet. So let's look at number 2. F for number 2 is a parallelogram.
No, for number 1.
I'm on number 1. Number 1 was a parallelogram. I'm going to go to number 2 in just a second. Number 1 is a parallelogram. 2 sets of sides are congruent and parallel. The diagonals are not the same length, and the midpoints are the same. Number 2. Okay. All right, we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail together. There's no talking right now. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I will answer it. Okay, so we're trying to figure out which one of these it is. Is it a parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, square, isosceles, trapezoid, and kite? Okay, when I found out the lengths of all 4 sides are 9.4. So let's talk about which one has 4 sides that are congruent. Is a parallelogram have 4 congruent sides? Yes or no? Shade. Rectangle? Rhombus? Yeah, so it could be a rhombus. Does a square have 4 sides that are congruent?
Yeah.
Isosceles, trapezoid?
No.
Kite?
No.
Okay, so we're between a rhombus and a square. So let's look at the slopes. I've got 5/8, 8/5, 5/8, and 8/5. While they are reciprocals, they're not opposite reciprocals, which means they're not perpendicular. I can see that sides PL and AY are parallel. LA and YP are parallel. Okay? So I'm pretty sure at this point I've got a rhombus. I'm going to check and see if the diagonals are congruent or not, and if they meet at right angles. Because a square has congruent diagonals, but a rhombus does not. They both are perpendicular. Okay, so I'm going to look at D. D, I can see that I have P to A. The diagonal P to A is 18.4. And the diagonal L to Y is 4.2. My slopes for PA is 1. My slopes for LY is -1. 1 is the opposite reciprocal of -1. I'm going to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, correcting your answers right now is worth a point. If you're not doing it, you won't get that point for today. If you don't have your packet with you, you can do it on a separate sheet of paper. Okay. The midpoints for E are the same, 9.5, 8.5 for P to A, and L to Y is also 9.5 to 8.5.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. PA, the midpoint is 9.5 and 8.5, and the midpoint for LY is 9.5 and 8.5. Just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, there will be one whole problem like this for your test, and your test is next Thursday. So you want to make sure you know what all of these are and what it means to prove what the shape is. You'll be okay. You're already having a panic attack. You're just resigned that you're not going to. That's not good. All right, I'm going to move it up so we can look at F and G because they're the longer ones. F, all four sides are equal. Slopes of the sides are not perpendicular, but they are parallel.
What the heck?
Diagonals are perpendicular and bisect each other, so it is a rhombus. Yes, we did.
We were just on E.
No. Okay, thank you. All right,
Alright, then that means you're going extra fast.
G, 1 is different than 2 because 4 sides are the same length and the diagonals are perpendicular. This should say and parallel right here. That's pretty important. Opposite sides are parallel. Okay. And then we'll move on to number 3.
What about G?
I don't know how you're missing this, Joe. You're right up front, honey. But I have read all of these out loud. I am not yelling at you because I'm recording. Because really, nobody wants to turn the recording on and hear Miss Murphy yell. It's really shrill and annoying. Joe's not finished, so I am waiting for him.
You want to wait right there.
It's okay.
Is it like, that says like 21 sides.
1 is different than 2 because 4 sides are all the same length and the diagonals are
I'm just
perpendicular.
sides are the same way. You can go.
All right, so I'm going to move on to 3. Remember, it's recorded. You could watch the recording. That's why I do it.
No recordings on the answers on that.
It's not just my voice, it's the picture, too. It's everything.
Okay, what is your website?
That's a really 88.
It's murphymath.com. All right.
She might pay us like $5 a month for it.
I don't think I pay anything for it. I don't know. My husband set it up. FI is 5. ND is 5. IN is 1.4. And DE is 2.8. Okay, so it only has one congruent side. So can it be a parallelogram? Can it be a rectangle? Rhombus?
Oh, 2.8, not 1.8.
Square? A isosceles trapezoid? You think it's a isosceles trapezoid right now? Or a kite? Okay, only one congruent side. Okay, let's look at this. So all you have to write is FI 5, ND 5, IN 1.4, and DE 2.8. That's why I circled them to try to make it easier for you. You don't have to show all the work. Hopefully you've already done that.
What is the first one?
That's what we needed.
5.
Okay.
What's the slope formula? I think I heard
Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We're going to move on and I'm going to talk about the slopes. The slopes for FI is 3/4. For ND is 4/3. For IN is -1. And DF is -1. We can see that these two right here have the same slope, so they must be parallel.
Hold on.
You can't take that. That's what's projected on the board.
Can I make
You
it so
can't
people
move
can
it.
actually see it?
Yes.
What's in these things?
What is what, honey? ND is 4/3. Rod, there's no talking right now.
Is that 7 minus 1?
This is 3/4, -1, 4/3, and -1. Okay, let's look at D. I'm on D. Okay. Fn is approximately 5.4, and ID is also 5.4. Interesting, their diagonals are the same length. The slope for Fn is 2/5, and the slope for ID is 5/2. So it doesn't tell me that they're parallel or perpendicular. They're just nothing. Okay. Of the diagonals, slopes are here. Slopes of the diagonals are here. 2/5, 5/2. Okay, I'm going to move it up so that we can see E. Fn is 7. Well, most people have this written down already, Joe, and so they're just correcting their answer.
You know what? I'm going to say this again. I had this whole packet done.
And you lost it, I know. But that's really not my problem, sweetheart. All right. Fn is 7.5, 6. ID is 8, 5.5. So their diagonals do not bisect each other. Yes? Yep. Fn is 7.5, 6 for E. ID's midpoint is 8, 5.5. Okay, the midpoints are not the same, therefore it does not bisect. Okay, I'm going to move it up so that the slopes are covered. So, F is an isosceles, gentlemen.
I'm writing like a sentence.
FIND is an isosceles trapezoid. It has one pair of parallel sides and one set of congruent sides, and the diagonals are congruent. It's an isosceles, which I think I spelled incorrectly. Trapezoid, one pair of parallel sides, one set of sides are congruent, the diagonals are congruent. G is a long part, so I want to put it up as soon as possible.
Thank you.
So all I'm going to do right now is cover this up. Are we okay with that? Cover D. Okay, I'll leave this up for a little bit. 1 and 2 had at least 2 sets of sides that were congruent. Please don't do that. 1 and 2 had at least 2 sets of congruent sides. 2 also had congruent diagonals and opposite sides that were slopes. And they were congruent, therefore parallel. Thank you.
Shoot, I can't spell scaling. See, that's how you know you were going too fast.
Since I said we're going to finish.
Like 3 seconds after we started, too.
I'm not gonna get it 1 point anymore.
And Ms. Murphy, what's that last fraction?
For G, for this one,
Yeah.
it says 1 and 2 had at least 2 sets of congruent sides. 2 also had congruent diagonals. Opposite sides had slopes that were congruent, therefore parallel.
So there ain't no fraction?
No fractions.
Yeah, I know.
It was more than any of your homework assignments. It was 4 times the amount.
What's the fraction say?
2 sets of sides are congruent.
What does this say? The slopes were true. I can't read that.
The fraction, which is congruent. That's congruent, but the assignments we don't have. Okay, I'm going to move on to 4 now. I'm on number 4. I'm on number 4 now.
You don't want mine.
Oh, not right now.
Okay. Let's look at number 4 right now.
For what?
I'm giving you a hard time. Number 4. I've got CA is 3.6, ME is 3.6, AM is 7.2, and EC is 7.2. So we have 2 sets of congruent sides. So that means it could be a parallelogram, a rectangle, or a kite. Rhombuses and squares have 4 congruent, so that can't be it. And we know an isosceles trapezoid only has 1.
It can't be a square.
That's what I said. All right. For C, CA is -3/2 is its slope. ME also has a slope of 3 over -2. Doesn't matter where the negative goes. As long as there's just 1, then we know it's negative. So those are parallel. AM and EC both have a slope of 2/3, so they're parallel. The opposite of -3/2 is 2/3, and its opposite reciprocal. So we know they're perpendicular. So we have 4 perpendicular sides. So we have 4 right angles. So that means, is it a parallelogram, rectangle, or kite? What has 4 right angles? Thank you, it's a rectangle. Okay. So rectangles, diagonals should be congruent. So I'm looking at D. C to M is 8.06, and A to E is also 8.06. Since it is a rectangle, the diagonals should not be perpendicular. I'm not going to move the paper, relax. The slopes for AE is 7/4, and the slope for CM is 1/8. I'm going to cover up B now. Hopefully you have that down so that we can see E. E, the midpoints are the same. Both midpoints for CM is -1, 7.5, and the midpoint for AE is -1, 7.5. That means our diagonals bisect each other. All you have to write down is right here and right here.
Just those answers?
That's what I'm telling you.
I thought we had to write all our own work.
So I've already checked to see that you've done the work and you've either gotten credit or not. Okay? So now copying down the correct answers is what you need to do.
I'm sure I missed the last every single thing you've had
Yes,
written on
Cortez?
this sheet of paper.
What? It's already in Power School. I believe you already talked to Michael about this earlier today, so I'm not sure why you're asking.
What are the answers right there?
The ones that I circled,
Amen.
-1, 7.5, and -1, 7.5. Okay.
Basically, you got
I'm going to move it up so that it's covering up C now. Yes, CJ.
For D, does that say 7 over 4?
Yes, it does. Okay, I'm going to move it up so we can't see C anymore, so you can see F. It's a rectangle because opposite sides are congruent and parallel. Consecutive sides, what does consecutive mean again?
next to it.
Next to each other are perpendicular. Diagonals are congruent and they bisect. The slopes of diagonals are not perpendicular. Make sure you have D written down because I'm about to cover it up.
Oh, I don't
Just
have E.
write down
What's
the
E?
E is -1, 7.5. -1,
I wrote E on D. What was D?
D is right here. 8.06. I know. I shouldn't write it. I should just make the symbol.
She's already ready.
I think that's the right thing.
sides are still like 3 times bigger.
I don't know what mine is. Oh, wait, I do. I'm just graphing. Okay, I'm moving it up so we can see G.
Make sure you tell me the number on 5. So
I will. Okay, I put it in bullet points. There's 3 bullet points because we're comparing it to 3 different things. 1 is similar to 4, except its consecutive sides are not perpendicular and its diagonals are not congruent. 2 is similar to 4, except 2 has 4 congruent sides and its diagonals are perpendicular and not congruent. 3 is similar because the diagonals are congruent, but 3 does not have 2 sets of parallel congruent sides and perpendicular consecutive sides.
Do you move over so I can?
Yes, I can. These 2 things are the most important, and on your test, when you have a problem like this, they will be given the most points. So writing out what shape it is and why it's that shape, writing out what is similar or different. Possibly. Yes.
whichever's your favorite.
Yours, of course.
Be for real.
For real. It says rectangle because opposite sides are congruent and parallel. Consecutive sides are perpendicular. Diagonals are congruent and bisect. Slopes of the diagonals are not perpendicular. 1 is similar to 4, except its consecutive sides are not perpendicular and its diagonals are not congruent. I did. I could have listed everything that they were similar. That would have taken way more. I just listed the things that were different.
You could have just done one.
Yes, CJ.
What does the third one say for G?
This one? 3 is similar because the diagonals are congruent, but 3 does not have 2 sets of parallel congruent sides and perpendicular consecutive
She's
sides.
trying to create a similar.
Yes.
What's 2 said?
This 2?
Yeah.
2 is similar to 4, except 2 has 4 congruent sides, and its diagonals are perpendicular and not congruent. I am going to turn to 5. Okay, I'm going to wait.
You said you were
Wait, hold on. It's not the last page.
Just because that's your maturity level, Rod, doesn't mean you have to put it up.
No, Miss Remy. You want a 5, you said?
I am going to 5.
I like that one. That's really.
I still
Okay, I'm giving you 1 minute from this moment to finish this up, and then I'm going to number 5.
Can you read number 3?
Well, sometimes will I be able to copy?
Yes.
Alright.
3 is similar because the diagonals are congruent, but 3 does not have 2 sets of parallel and congruent sides and perpendicular consecutive sides.
Too many.
15 seconds, and I'm turning it to the next one.
So I see her crying. This ain't Miss Murphy.
He wrote something in the wrong spot. Number 5. You guys, we got 2 more to go. We can do this. I'm looking at B. Remember, this is being recorded, and I have no problem sending it to your parents and saying, that noise right there, that was your child. Okay. B, of course. B, WI is 17. IS is 17, SH is 17, and HW is 17. So we have 4 congruent sides. Which shapes, please raise your hand if you can tell me which shapes have 4 congruent sides. There are 2 at least. Yes, John? A square is 1. Rod, what's the other one? Nope. Vince, help him out. Rhombus.
Yes.
I was gonna say square, but it seems.
Okay. Sorry, Rod. So all you gotta write down is the 17s for B. Okay? These slopes, WI slope is negative 8 over 15. SH's slope is 8 over negative 15. So they are parallel to each other. IS has a slope of 15 over 8. And HW has a slope of 15 over 8. And we can see that SH and HW are perpendicular to each other. And WI and SI are perpendicular to each other.
Square.
So we've got 4 right angles. That means, Joe, you're correct, it would have to be a square.
I knew that.
I'm just too smart for this.
I wish you wrote faster and didn't lose yourself, though. All right,
I wish you explained. That's why you were playing
D is 24.04 is the length of WS, and WS's slope is negative 23 over 7. IH is 24 over 7, and its slope is 7. Can you guys see this? 7 over 23. WS and IH. Okay? So the slopes are perpendicular. So our diagonals are congruent and perpendicular. Yes.
What did you say the slope was?
The slope for WS is negative 23 over 7. The slope for IH is 7 over 23.
Oh, not
So,
negative.
not negative. Because they have to switch signs, right, to be perpendicular? Okay. We are going to move on to E, so I'm going to cover up B now. D, the lengths of D are 24.04 and 24.04 for IH. The slopes for WS is negative 23 over 7 and 7 over 23 for IH. The midpoint for WS is 8.5, comma negative 3.5. And the midpoint for IH is 8.5 and negative 3.5. They have the same, which means the diagonals bisect. Madison, I am always in your way. I'm sorry. All right, I am going to move it up so that we can see F. So C is going to get covered. I can repeat it for you. Yes, WS is 24.04, and WS's slope is negative 23 over 7. IH's length is 24.04, and its slope is 7 over 23. So F, it's a square. All 4 sides are congruent. Opposite sides are parallel. Consecutive sides are perpendicular. Okay. Diagonals are congruent and perpendicular, and the diagonals bisect each other. I am going to move on to G. So I'm going to be covering up D.
How can it be, what else? Does the equal sign mean in the
Yeah. So I'm going to zoom out slightly so this is more legible.
And when one bisects,
No, it is 4 short statements. 5, let me read them, please. 5 is like 1 because opposite sides are congruent and parallel. Diagonals bisect each other. But 1 does not have 4 congruent sides and 4 90-degree angles and congruent perpendicular diagonals. 5 is like 2 because opposite sides are congruent and parallel. and all four sides are congruent diagonals are perpendicular. It is different because 5 has perpendicular sides, 2 doesn't, and 5 diagonals are congruent. And 5's diagonals are congruent, not 5 diagonals, because there can't be 5 diagonals. 5 is different from 3 in everything except diagonals are congruent, and it has one congruent set of sides and one set of parallel sides. 5 is like 4 in everything except 5 has 4 congruent sides instead of 2 sets, and 5 has perpendicular diagonals. I'm going to leave this up for quite a while because there's a lot there. I'm going to take attendance while you do it, and then we will move on to the last one. We got one. This is number 5. You know there are 6 problems. So we'll have one more after this, but this is the most writing I think I did.
This one?
Yeah.
How? And that the next one has less work.
I made it more concise in my writing. I should have made this one more concise.
Can I make it concise?
No.
Blame me for eating your paper.
That's very interesting.
Yes,
I care
know.
so incredibly much right now.
That was right. So. I cannot read this.
Lena, you got this all written down?
Five is like 2 because 5 has long writing. So does 2.
So,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
yes.
Unprovoked hostility.
Be nice to each other.
She.
No, I don't want to hear about it. Just don't touch each other anymore. Or throw things at each other or be in any way obnoxious.
Stop covering the
Okay, I'm going to move on.
No.
Yes, Joe, I'm gonna show it to you later, Joe. Show it to you later. We are on number 6.
Okay.
We are on
Alright, I'm sorry.
number 6.
Nobody's yelling.
I'm not yelling you, I'm teasing you. Do I?
Just keep on yelling. It won't stop. I was thinking, I'm sorry. Even though I shouldn't be sorry.
Alright, we're looking at number 6. The lengths of NE and EA are both 11.2. The lengths of AT and TN are both 7.07. So, which shapes have 2 sets of congruent sides? Does a parallelogram? Rectangle?
No, yes, no.
Rhombus? How many sides are congruent? 4, so that's not going to work. Square?
Yes.
4 sides, and we only have 2. Isosceles trapezoid only has 1,
No.
so it could be a parallelogram, rectangle, or kite. So let's look at, I know you guys know what it is, so okay. I'm just proving how. The slope of NE is -2. The slope of EA is 2 over -11. The slope of AT is 7 over -1. And the slope of TN is -1 over 7. We don't have any parallel sides. We don't have any perpendicular sides. This limits us to it being a kite. Okay? So we know that kites' diagonals are not congruent, but they are perpendicular. I'm not moving anything. I'm writing something down. Okay. NA's length, the length of the diagonal is 10. but ET's length is 15. They're not congruent. I'm looking at D right now.
Oh,
The slopes of NA are 4/3, and the slope of ET is 3 over negative 4. So if you want to lose your point,
Is it negative 7 over
keep doing
Is it 7
it. 7 over negative 1 and negative 1 over 7.
We're on C.
No, we were on D. Yes, CJ.
I don't know what EC is. Really.
For D, you don't know what ET is?
I can't say.
ET's length is 15, and its slope is 3 over negative 4. So the diagonals are perpendicular, but they're not congruent. This is 4 over 3, and this is 3 over negative 4. I am going to move it up, so we're covering up B. E, the midpoint is 5, A for NA, and ET's midpoint is 7, 7.5. But we know the diagonals of a kite from our warm-up today do not bisect each other. I moved it over here so that you don't need to see it. That's why I wrote it like that. Okay, I'm going to cover up C so that I can do F. F is a kite. Consecutive sides are congruent. Nothing is parallel, and diagonals are perpendicular, but not congruent or bisect.
Hold on.
E 5.5, 8, and 7, 7.
Is that a 2.5?
Is this 7.5?
7.
Okay, G, I tried to make it like one line for each thing, but remember I'm comparing it to 5 different things, so there are going to be 5 lines. I'm going to move it up so we can begin. Okay. 1 is like 6, and then it has 2 sets of congruent sides, but they are consecutive for 6 instead of opposite. Nothing else is the same. 6 is like 2, in that the sides are congruent, but 2 has all 4 sides congruent. Sit down. Diagonals are perpendicular. 6 is like 3, because the sides are congruent, but not 2 sets like 6. 6 is like 4. It has 2 sets of congruent sides, but 6s are consecutive, not opposite. And 6 is like 5 because the diagonals are perpendicular. While you're doing this, I do have the next packet we're going to do. It is due next Tuesday, the 22nd. You might want to put it on there.
Is it 4 points as well? No.
It is 3 points because you're going to take 3 days to do it.
Really?
Yeah?
Point
Oh, that's just not work.